to say congratulations on not crashing the Ferrari on the last mission.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as the best review I've ever had.
You park the car in the garage and everyone is going to be happy.
Okay, good.
You know
from
what I mean?
From your mouth to everybody's ear.
Yeah, I'm not worried. Okay, so I have a little bit of time with you. I have a whole bunch of random questions. Let's get into it. Recently, I've been asking everybody, I'm obsessed with seeing movies in movie theaters, the way they're meant to be seen, and not on an iPhone or whatever. Yes. Do you have a favorite movie theater?
A favorite movie theater? Yeah. Now I do. You know, I'm part of this whole, the Jason Reitman's whole director collective who acquired that theater in Westwood.
The Village in Westwood.
The Village in Westwood. That is my new favorite theater because I got to take care of it.
I've seen tentative plans of what that's going to look like in terms of there's going to be like a bar on the roof or something. Like I've seen some crazy stuff and it looks like it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be sensational. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Stanley Kubrick movie?
A favorite Stanley Kubrick movie? Well, you know my whole thing about favorites.
Yes.
I always talk about how my opinion is meaningless.
Sure.
I would say this. I am more partial to black and white Kubrick than color Kubrick.
Okay. The answer for Kubrick and the favorite one is they're all amazing.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm joking around.
They're all amazing.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the great diplomatic response. If I was royalty, I would say they're all amazing. I
mean, like I could say anyway, let's move on. So Stunts are finally going to be part of the Academy Awards.
Yes.
But they're not going to be part of the Academy Awards till 2028 ceremony, meaning 2027.
Yes.
Do you think that the reason it starts in 2027 and not this year is because the Academy didn't want Tom competing with himself in all 5 nominations?
I think that's probably what would have happened in the case of this movie.
Yeah, I'm convinced of this. Yeah. They were like, Tom cannot, we'll get it on something else.
Yeah.
Being really serious, you've been working on Mission for your whole life.
It feels like that, yes.
Yeah. So what does it actually feel like for you to have this chapter really coming to a close? Because as far as I know, this is the last one. Who knows what happens, but this really could be it. So what is it like for this chapter closing?
I have not processed it yet. But when you're making these movies and when you're involved in the process of making it, you're dreaming about it at night. You're editing the movie in your head. I'm still not at that place where the movie is finished. So, ask me again in a year.
Okay, you guys have put in incredible action set pieces with insane things all around the world. But I have to ask, was there ever anything that you guys had come up with that you just couldn't, cool ideas, but you just couldn't find a place for them in these movies?
Well, what you're seeing in this movie is that we've been talking about a biplane sequence for years. We've been talking about a submarine for years. The ending of the movie, the last scene in Trafalgar Square, is a concept Tom and I have been talking about since the first Mission Impossible I worked on. They find their way in there eventually.
I don't want to get specific, but when we spoke last time, you said you had a idea of where it was all going to go for the ending of this movie, yes. But you weren't 100% you were going to get there. Is the ending of this movie what you had thought about all that time ago?
Yes.
So it was that scene?
Yes.
How close did Mission come to going into outer space?
Not. I get asked all the time, and the really tricky thing about shooting in outer space is Mission relies entirely on gravity. When you think about every single memorable stunt in a Mission Impossible, gravity is a huge factor. So shooting in zero G would be a complete rethink of how to make a Mission Impossible.
One of the things, I love to talk about editing. With this film, you mentioned in the last film that it went through certain changes. With this film, how did this edit go in relation to the other missions?
Interestingly enough, post Dead Reckoning, we had a complete rethink of this movie, tried to make a nonlinear movie, tried to make something that was shorter, and the movie just went right back to the way it wanted to be. It was always headed to this point.
Did you end up with a lot of deleted scenes?
We did. We always do. Sometimes it's pieces, a longer version of a scene you saw, but in this case, there are a few deleted scenes. There was even we were going down one road and shot a bunch of stuff on St. Matthew Island, the cottage in the Arctic, and changed course. So there's actually an alternative reality on St. Matthew Island.
I'm so curious because the movie's 2 hours, 49 minutes. Did you ever have a cut that was like 3:30 or longer, or was it always?
Eddie Hamilton tells me there was a 4-hour cut of this movie, which I thankfully never saw.
But that's probably like an assembly cut.
Yeah, that's an assembly, and I tend not to watch those. Eddie makes an assembly, and I sit down and just start going through it scene by scene.
Sure.
So until I've gone through a cut with Eddie, I don't watch it, and so it's much shorter by the time I sit down to watch it.
When we spoke last time, you mentioned that a lot of this movie had been shot except for certain things.
Yes.
But then you ended up going out and shooting those other things.
Yes.
Did you end up shooting a lot more than you expected, or was it what you thought going in?
No, it was what we thought going in. I would say there are only two scenes. There are really only two scenes I can think of that came much later. One of them being Hayley Atwell's introduction. We shot that about 2 months ago.
That's crazy.
Yes, it is.
I'm just thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, this is now there's 8 films in the mission. Basically, what I'm curious about is there any talk of doing? And I know it's early, but is there any talk of doing like a big box set of all the movies and including like cool deleted scenes and extras? Or
I haven't had that conversation, but the studio is more than welcome to have that conversation.
Sure. I know that you don't want to show typically deleted scenes and alt takes and all that other stuff. But is there a world in like a box set where if Paramount said, would you be down for showing certain things that you would pull back the curtain?
Well, we always do. Eddie and I like to do the deleted footage montage. We show you shots of scenes and we give you glimpses of those scenes and kind of let you imagine what it was. But I always find it's weird when you're watching deleted scenes because to me, I describe that as like, it's almost like I serve you an omelet and then I bring you the eggshells.
Sure.
They're all things that are necessary to make the movie, but they're not, in the end, they're not what makes the movie.
I totally get it. Some directors I've spoken with, like, they're like, screw it. I'll show all these scenes. And others are like, you're not going to see anything.
No, well, the only director's cut I've ever seen that I thought was really a significant improvement on the movie was Das Boot. Every other time I see a director's cut and I see scenes added, all I'm thinking is, I could totally see why they cut this out.
We had this conversation last time and I told you to watch the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut. And you said you would.
Which I have not, and I hear that's very, very good. I hear that's an improvement on the movie.
It is night and day. It is a masterpiece.
So why didn't they release that?
There was I think Ridley has admitted he made a mistake. I think the studio basically said it was close to 3 hours. Can you make it shorter? 45 minutes is missing. It destroyed the film.
Well, you know the story about Brazil, how they cut Brazil down, or the original American release of Once Upon a Time in America. Shorter isn't better. Fallout, we did a cut that was 5 minutes shorter, and the scores plummeted. In only 5 minutes. Tom and I say all the time, we were asked when this movie was coming together and we didn't know the runtime. And the studio would say, well, how long is the movie? And we always say, as long as it's entertaining.
Sure. By the way, I agree. And people don't realize one scene can make or break a movie.
Absolutely.
When you think of all the action scenes you've done with Tom, and all of them are just nail biters that are like, holy F, right? What's like the top 3 or 5 times you were the most nervous on set?
Everything in the aerial sequence in this movie.
Everything.
That's the top 3.
Because I think people don't realize that it's like hurricane winds that are pushing him around.
Yeah.
The how cold it is. Can you sort of describe to people what this was?
The really terrifying part of that is that when Tom climbs out onto the wing of that plane, he's immediately being hit with wind going 140 miles an hour. you can't breathe. And I'm saying this from experience. I did it as well. And it's pretty extraordinary. But what would happen is we'd have a timer. Mary Boulding, my assistant director, would be sitting next to me in the helicopter. And as soon as Tom climbed out on the wing, she would start a timer. And it was her job to tell me, counting off every minute that he was on the wing. So imagine you're hearing in your headphones as you're watching the sequence, 1 minute on the wing, 2 minutes on the wing. And we knew that at 12 minutes, between the physical exertion and the lack of oxygen, that Tom was starting to lose strength rapidly. And there were times when Tom wanted to complete the action, but had gone way past the 12-minute mark and was so physically exhausted he couldn't get back into the plane. And you can't land the plane if Tom is on the wing of the plane. And there were times we were up there long enough that there was not enough fuel in the plane. And so fuel was running out and Tom was laying on the wing. And it was like watching a Mission Impossible movie of, is he going to get back into the cockpit on time for them to land the plane? Those are pretty intense days.
Yeah,
that's a snapshot.
We have to talk about the submarine sequence just because it is fucking crazy. So I think that people don't, when they're watching it, they're not going to realize like what went into that sequence and how little oxygen Tom had, and the fact that no one does a submarine sequence where there's water in one room but not water in the other. And on top of that, you're rotating it. So the water is like, you're basically throwing everything you possibly can at this sequence. Yeah. So can you sort of talk about all of this? Yeah,
well, in order to make the submarine roll, and thank you, I'm glad you noticed that hits the nail on the head. When Eric Jenderson and I were designing this sequence, as I'd seen other sequences with people moving through wrecks of ships, if the ship is flooded, it's fairly ghostly and it's kind of one note. That it's not sustainable for the length of time we wanted. It lacked a certain element of danger. Once we had the idea that he would start moving water through the submarine in order to move from chamber to chamber, that, of course, created displacement, which we said, well, what if the submarine started rolling? And, of course, because you're in a submarine, you're in a tube, you can do that. As soon as that happened, the exponential number of solutions to those problems started to build, and that's where we ended up building the gimbal. And hopefully people will see it on the special features in home media. You're talking about a tank that was 8.5 million liters. It did not exist anywhere in the world, so we had to build it. We had to build 2 giant derrick cranes on either side of that tank, which could raise and lower a gimbal. Now, what a gimbal is a gimbal is anything that allows you to rotate or pivot the set or the set piece that you're on. This gimbal was a 60-foot diameter cylinder that you could take one set out of and load another set into. It took 2 weeks to unload and reload a set. That gimbal could rotate 360 degrees and it could pitch 45 degrees in both directions and weighed 1,000 tons. So you're talking about a 360 degree rotating 1,000 ton steel gimbal that was submersible and worked with such precision that it actually could be pivoted down to the millimeter. The building of that took 2.5 years while we were making another movie and was growing behind my trailer. So every morning I would come to work and have meetings with my crew in my trailer, and I would watch as they were building this thing. And we knew while we were building it, from the experience of having made all these other movies, that anything you thought you were going to do and anything you planned, and we pre-vised it, which, we did a pre-visualized animatic for people who don't know what that is. You're essentially animating the sequence in advance. We did storyboards. We had shot lists. We did everything that you're supposed to do, knowing that everything we were doing was not going to work when we got there because the sheer physics of it was something we couldn't predict. So I was in that way, if you've ever seen Fellini's 8.5, where he goes to work every day watching them build a rocket, and he didn't know what they were building the rocket for. That was a snapshot of what it was like doing the submarine sequence.
I have to stop with you. They're going to kill me. I'm just going to say congratulations.
Thank you.
And hopefully we talk more about this in the future.
We will.